This is my mood after editing for 2 days. That's how long it takes me because I'm still a newbie. But hopefully you guys appreciate the effort. And yeah, I hope you enjoy watching the videos.
Hello again, kicking off this week's vlog with a quick solo trip to a local hidden gem, Poke Express. The staff here were so nice. They made a first timer like me try a bunch of options before selecting a few. I scoffed this down in my car and honestly it was life-changing food. This week I also managed to visit one of my favorite stores in Vegas, Goodwill. And I'm not kidding, there's just something special about Goodwill in Vegas. You can find items from people who lived in Vegas a long time ago when it was such a different city. It's like the budget version of going to Antique Alley Mall in the Arts District. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, well, this is what it's like since I went there as well this week after grabbing some brunch with a friend at the newly expanded Esther's Kitchen. One of my other favorite activities in Vegas is visiting the Hearts Alive Cat Cafe and Shelter. I've been thinking a lot about getting a cat lately, so I come here every few weeks to play with them and hopefully find one I really bond with. Most of the kitties here are up for adoption and they're so cute, just look at them. Many of them also have traumatic pasts and are just deserving of a new chance, so if this is something you've been thinking about, I highly encourage you to check them out. Besides that and poker, this week has just been a week of self-care with therapy and some solid workout sessions at Legree Lab. Now on to some hands that I played at my usual 5-10 at the win. In this first hand we have King Jack off on the button. Hijack raises to 30 and we call. The flop is 10-6-5, 2 clubs. He checks and since I'm holding a club, I decide to bet my backdoor equity, plus my 2 overs could also be good if I hit a pair. The turn is a 7 and he checks again. We decide to check back and the river is a 3 of clubs. Now any 4 makes a straight, plus we have a club in our hand, so I thought we could bet big here as a bluff, especially since our opponent has shown a considerable amount of weakness, so I decided to bet 200 to fold him off any 1-pair hands. He tanks for quite a while before making the call. We table what is surely the loser, and he shows us 7-8 suited for the winning hand. Next up, we're in the small blind with 3-4 of diamonds. This is probably a fold, but here we're raising it up to 40. Big blind and under the gun who limped call, and we see a flop of 6 deuce deuce rainbow. No diamond, unfortunately, but we do have some equity. Since we flopped decently, we might as well continue. We fire 50. Big blind folds before we even have the chips out, but under the gun calls. The turn is an ace. Now, I'm not exactly sure what limp under the gun then call a small blind raise range is, but I would still say that this is a good card for us to rep. So here we go, firing again, this time for 200 and hoping desperately to get a fold. We instead get a raise to 740, and that's just about enough to get us off 4 high. In the next hand, we have King Jack off in the big blind. Under the gun makes it 30 and we're the only caller. The flop comes 6-6-3 rainbow. He c-bets 30 and we decide to peel one. Turn is a king of spades. We check thinking that this is a good card for him to rep, so we let him do the betting for us and he does. He bets 80 and we call. The river is a 7. We check again and he checks behind, making us feel pretty good about our top pair. We turn it over, he muttered something like jack on the turn, implying that he had ace jack, which would have certainly coolered us for a pot bigger than what this was for sure. In this hand, we have 10 jack off in the small blind. We complete and are heads up with big blind. We flop top pair on a board of 10-7-4, 2 spades. We think this is good enough to bet, so we throw out 30. Big blind calls and we see a turn of the 2 of clubs. We check and he bets 30. I think our top pair is still good, especially seeing 2 flushes out there. This is a little weird, I'll admit, but I raised to 100. I figure since big blind checked pre-flop, he might still have a bunch of one pair hands here looking for protection, like sevens. I mean, his range is a little wide here. Anyway, our opponent doesn't take too long to call, and we see a river of the two of spades. While the front door flush gets there, I'm not too worried about that, since he just called the flop and then made a very small bet on the turn. So I bet small, trying to get a call from one pair hands, and we get just that. We still have no clue what he had. Maybe he was outkicked with a pair of tens as well. Next up, we're in the cutoff with ace jack off. We raise it up and get calls from the button and big blind. We smash the board and flop trips with the best kicker. Big blind checks, I check, and button fires 60. Big blind calls 60 and we raise it up to 220. Small blind quickly calls and big blind folds. On the turn, it gets even better. We boat up with an ace. Since we block a lot of value hands now, I decide to not go too big and bet 250, which is small enough for him to still get good odds for his flush draw if he's chasing that. This also leaves our opponent with about 700 behind, which can easily go in on the river. The river is a 5 of diamonds, which is a great card for us to go all in. He snap calls and we give him the bad news. He still wants to show the table what he had, and what he had was 9-3 of diamonds. In this next hand, we have ace deuce off on the button, and we open it up to 30. Now, this hand I wouldn't open in regular 5-10, but in 5-10 with an ante, it's fine to open. Only big blind calls, and we see a flop of queen 8-4 rainbow. Look, I just wanted to take a stab, guys, so when big blind checks, I bet 30. Turn is a 6, and it's still a rainbow board. Big blind checks again, and we decide to check it back here. Ace high might still be good here sometimes. The river is a repeat 4. Here, the big blind bets 50, which I took as weakness, but maybe I shouldn't since he can still have a lot of queens in his range. Anyways, we make it 200, which I'm sure is not solver approved or anything. I just felt like the 50 bet was a block of some sort on the river, which would fold to a raise. So we are out here repping fours, and thank goodness he folds and we don't have to show our punt. But it's now on the vlog for all to see. Next up, we're in the hijack with king jack of spades. We raise it to 40. Someone must have come back to the table and posted or something, which is why it's a little bigger. Cut off 3 bets to 140 and we make the call. We see a flop of jack 9-5, 2 hearts. We check like we do with almost our whole range here, and he bets 150. We call, no real reason to raise it up here, and see the 8 of diamonds turn. We check, and this time he bets 430. On this one, I thought for a long time. Sure, he can still have flush draws, but that's about all the bluffs that we beat. A lot of the other hands he might be bluffing are hands like king queen and king 10, and we block those. Plus, he could already have a made hand like 6-7, queen 10, an overpair, a set of 9s, set of jacks. There's just a lot going on, and I'm not sure which river cards are actually good for me and what I'm trying to dodge, so I laid this one down. I checked the solver on this one, and apparently there's a lot of donking quarter pot on the turn by hijack. King jack falls into that range along with a lot of other hands that have a jack or a 9, as well as bluffs such as 7s, 6-5, 4-5, king queen, king 10. This actually makes so much sense, as we're often able to see the river for a small price that we set with our draws, and forces our opponent to raise more nutted hands, making a hand like king jack, other one pair hands, an easy fold. As played, when we check, our opponent bets pretty big. We should still call king jack because I didn't account for some of the other bluffs that he could have, like ace queen, ace deuce, king 6, even if not hearts. So I guess the punchline here is, if I don't think our opponent is capable of finding enough bluffs, we can fold king jack, but if he is, we should be calling. On to the next hand, and we have king queen off in low jack. We open and get 2 callers from button and small blind. Big blind raises to 200. It's quite big. I don't expect we'll be going four-way that often, so I call, and sure enough, the others fold. The flop is 8-7 deuce, 2 hearts. The big blind now bets 150, and I figured this isn't a board that hits him too much. We also block some premium pairs, so we raise it up to 420. Sadly, he calls, and now we have a decision to make when the 4 of hearts falls on the turn. He checks, and well, since it's a pretty good card for our range, we bet 640 and quickly get the fold. Honestly, this was a pretty poorly played hand all round. I'm not supposed to be calling king-queen off pre-flop, not supposed to have any raises on the turn, but as played, if that's at all relevant anymore, I think we kind of have to blast it on the turn. Anyway, who's counting my punts this session? Where are we at now? In this hand, we are heads up in big blind versus small blind. He raises to 30 and I call. The flop is jack, 9, 8, 2 clubs. He checks and I check behind. The turn is another jack. He puts out a bet of 30 and we make the call. The river is a 3 of clubs and now we have almost the nuts. He bets 210. I mean, we can't entirely rule out boats. There might be some amount of jacks and jack 9 that check the flop and bet the turn and river, but we're not worried about that now as there's still a lot of hands that can call a raise. So we raise it up to 650 and he thinks it through for a while. Once we see that we are not facing a raise, just a call, we're pretty happy and turn over the winning hand. And now we pick up king jack suited again. Can we win this one, please? We open it up in cutoff and small blind raises to 190. I think you can raise sometimes here, but I think calling is the highest frequency play, so I do just that. The flop is king 5 deuce, giving us top pair with backdoor flush draw possibilities. He bets 160 and we call. We see a turn of the 5 of diamonds and he bets 470. And look, I'm not proud of this. You've seen me make some pretty big bluffs here and there, but somehow this bet screamed strength to me, and spoiler alert, I folded, which is actually a huge mistake. We're talking double-digit big blinds, while we're usually talking about mistakes in the decimals of big blinds, so yeah, this is one I would like to forget. Alright, walk it off. Time for the next hand. We're in the button with jacks, there's a raise from the cutoff, and we raise it to 100. Small blind then raises it to 300, and we call and see a flop of 10-6-4 rainbow. Our opponent bets 230 and we call. The turn is a bit of a bummer. It's an ace, which hits our opponent's range a lot. He fires a bet of 810 and we lay this one down. As if history is repeating itself, we now pick up king queen off in the cutoff. Hijack opens to 30 and we 3-bet to 100. He calls and we are heads up to a flop of ace king 8 rainbow. He checks and we check back. The turn gives us 2 pairs, so when he checks to us, we put out a bet of 100. He calls and the river is one of the worst cards in the deck. It's an 8, which means any ace now beats us. He checks and there's not much we can do but check behind. Sure enough, he turns over ace 7 and scoops the pot. Now in this hand, we sadly didn't capture the footage, but it is one of the more interesting hands of the session. We have ace king of spades in the big blind, hijack raises it up to 30, button calls, and I raise to 170. Hijack now 4-bets to 420, button gets out of the way, and we call. The flop is ace 8-3 rainbow, which is a pretty nice looking flop for us to go for multiple streets. I check, he bets 100, which is tiny compared to the size of the pot. I considered raising here, but I feel that since there's not too many bluffs to be found on this board, it's probably better if I have a very narrow value raise range as well, maybe just pocket 8s where I don't block the ace, giving our opponent more hands to call with, so I decided to just call. The turn is the queen of hearts. It's not a good card for us since queens and ace queen now beat us, but I guess he shouldn't have too many of those. I check and he checks back. The river is the 8 of hearts. and I bet 420. He tanks for a while, then puts in way more chips than 420. He actually goes all in for 3,000. This is definitely not what we were hoping to see. I feel like it's just really hard for him to be bluffing here, even though Ace King is such a good hand. Plus, we don't have any hearts in our hand, which means that he has quite a lot of flushes in his range. I guess this is just one of those spots where I can just call if I have a heart and fold if I don't. So I make somewhat of a big laydown. Anyway, he tells me a few days later that he had ace 4 of hearts, which makes a lot of sense. Things are going downhill fast when we pick up ace king once again. This time it's the ace king of clubs and we're in the big blind. Under the gun limps and so does under the gun 1 and small blind. I make it 50 and only under the gun and under the gun 1 call. The flop is ace 6-6 rainbow with 1 club. I bet 50, under the gun folds, and under the gun 1 calls. The turn is a 7, also bringing in a spade draw. I bet 100 and our opponent quickly calls. The river is the 8 of hearts. We bet 350 and our opponent quickly folds. Next up, we have 2 black aces in hijack. Lately, we've been getting insta-folds from people when we raise it up with premium pairs, but here we have nothing to worry about as under the gun 1 opens the action for us. I 3-bet to 90, and to our surprise, it's cutoff that calls and under the gun 1 that folds. The flop is ace 10-9 with 2 hearts. I check. I feel like with 2 aces in our hands, it's a bit hard to get value from our opponent. Anyway, he bets 150 rather quickly. I raise it up to 450. There's quite a few draws that he can have here, such as flush draws, some kind of backdoor flush draw with Broadway cards, so we want him to pay to see a turn. Unfortunately, he folds, and we're wondering if we lost out on a bit of value here. Not entirely sure since it's not possible to sim cold calling a 3-bet, and the guy's a recreational player, so it's also a bit hard to know what his range looks like. It may have been better to just call, buckle up, and hope for clean runouts and more betting from him, but not sure on that one. Alright guys, a bit of a trigger warning on this one. We have King Jack of Diamonds in the big blind. Under the gun is a recreational player who has been raising a lot, opens it up to 30. Low Jack makes it 90 off a stack of about 2,000. Now we would usually fold King Jack suited to this early action, but we thought this was a spot where Low Jack recognizes that under the gun is opening wide. Anyway, you get the point. We make it 300. Under the gun folds and hijack calls. Oh boy. Luckily or unluckily, we flop top pair on King 3 deuce 2 clubs. We're about to find out as we bet 200. He calls and we see a turn of the 7 of hearts. I think this is a spot where checking makes more sense. If we bet and get called, I'm not really sure what we're ahead of. I mean, we lose to King Queen suited, some ace king that call in position pre-flop, maybe even pocket aces. I check and he checks back. The river is the 6 of spades, and we check, hoping for an easy check call. However, he checks back and we take it down with our top pair, and are very grateful that our questionable raise pre-flop paid off this time. Alright guys, we are officially on a mini downswing. I feel like I've lost almost every session. I've lost 6 out of 7 of my last sessions, so that's not good. And yeah, we've almost lost like 10k in a row, so it's been a pretty awful couple of weeks. Oh, in there was a couple of bad sessions on 10, 20, 20, which is a game I probably shouldn't have been playing. It wasn't like a good game. Among that are some bad sessions on 5, 10, 10 as well. So yeah, it really adds up, and not much else I can say about that. Just study more, get better, and look forward to the next session. At the end of this week, I flew to Hawaii to meet up with 2 of my best childhood friends. Hawaii is a midpoint between Sydney, where they live, and Vegas. I was so excited to see them and very grateful since they had to take time away from their husbands and babies to get together. My friends are making a
guys.
special appearance here as I interview
Danny.
them on what they really think
Nina.
about me playing poker.
I'm gonna ask you guys a few questions. How much do you guys know about poker, by the way?
Not much.
Nina.
Same.
Okay. All right. It's a good start. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like really beginner and 10 being like the best players in the world, what do you think I am?
7.
Yeah, I think 7 is fair.
Okay. All right. I'm definitely lower than that. Okay. Well, that leads me to my next question. So since I've been playing poker for like the last 8 years, was there ever a time where you thought that I was broke or going to go broke?
Yes.
Wait, when? When did you think I was broke?
When you quit in Melbourne?
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I did quit. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought your career would be up and down.
I mean, fair. I know you're both married, but in another lifetime, would you guys ever date a poker player?
Like a professional poker player.
That's their full-time gig.
I wouldn't say no,
Okay.
but I don't know enough about them.
I would say no.
Why not?
I don't know if it's a long-term career. Maybe it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's totally fair. Okay, last question. How much do you think I've won or lost in poker lifetime? Since the beginning. So like, if I didn't play poker, I would be this much richer or this much poorer.
I think 150,000. Just like overall, right?
Won or lost?
I think 1.
Won 150 grand. Okay.
I think 300,000 won.
Okay.
Who's closer?
Daddy's close.
What
I'm not gonna tell you the exact amount, but I refuse to pay $40 for a beach umbrella today, so if that gives you a clue. Yeah, definitely Daddy would be closer. Between 150,000 and 300,000.
Oh.
So,
I just want to clarify that I personally wouldn't date a poker player, but I'm totally supportive of other people dating or marrying a poker player. The end.
okay.
Yeah.
It was a really revitalizing holiday and just the break I needed in the midst of this not so mini downswing. Thank you guys so much for watching and stay tuned for next vlog as I recap my trip to LA playing my first ever stream on Hustler Casino. Bye for now.